When Sumara, a woman, said, "No, the whole town chose to ignore me," Robert, a rancher marked by solitude, decided to make the unthinkable and protect her. That gesture ignited collective fury, unleashed chases, gunfire, and betrayals. Amid dust, twisted lore, and loaded glances, both would have to fight to survive and discover whether courage could turn into love, on a frontier where every decision is paid for with blood and eternal silence. Trembling, wrapped in a thin, dirty shawl, she dragged herself along the road as if trying to disappear from the scorching sunlight and the endless dust. The dust clung to her skin, and dark marks ran along her thigh, witnesses of a recent past she did not want to reveal. Every breath was a gasp of terror, and every movement a monumental effort to stay on her feet without collapsing. Suddenly, the firm step of boots on dry earth was heard. Robert Mercer saw her first as a low, clumsy shadow, moving strangely, not like a traveler or a drunk, but like prey, vulnerable, aware that every second counted. That fear was familiar to Robert. It always began the same way. A frightened woman in a town of men that drew dangerous gazes. She was 54, her body strong like aged oak, hands hardened from ranch work, face toughened by life, calm etched as a natural shield. She did not look away from suffering. Returning from fixing a water trough, he noticed the footprints in the dust. Then he saw her. Sumara lifted her head, and her eyes, full of sharp fear, locked onto him with the intensity of someone defying danger. Robert carefully dismounted, unhurried, speaking in a soft, measured voice. "Miss," he said, approaching as one speaks to a frightened animal. Sumara shivered at the word, clutching her shawl tightly as her only refuge against the world pursuing her. Robert raised his hands to show he meant no harm. At first there were no words, just ragged breathing and eyes shining wet with fear. Every step he took was slow, meticulous, a dance between calm and constant alertness. When he got close enough, he crouched, positioning himself between her and the open road. Her shawl trembled, not from cold, but from pain and fright. Robert extended his hand toward her elbow to help her up, and she reacted as if he had touched fire. "Don't touch that," she warned in a broken, urgent voice, more a sound of caution than reproach. Robert stepped back instantly. "All right, I won't," she murmured, swallowing, her left arm shaking as she tried to stay upright, covering her wound even more. It was then that Robert noticed the dark stains spreading beneath the shawl near her ribs. Each breath she took was a monumental effort. Every movement was a secret, desperately guarded, a fragment of pain she did not want to reveal. Robert clenched his jaw, not looking at her directly, nor asking yet. He did not want to provoke her. He spoke calmly, offering the minimum necessary to show care. "I can bring you water, shade, a safe place. I'm not a man of many sweet words, but I don't leave anyone by the road." Her eyes glimmered with distrust. Robert nodded, understanding she did not need trust right now, only survival. "You don't have to trust me, but you need to live through the next hour." Her gaze swept the road and the fence line, fearing an invisible enemy. Robert followed her gaze. Nothing moved, but he understood what that fear meant. He took his canteen, placed it a few steps away without forcing her. "You can take it," he said, firm but calm. She looked at it as if it were a trap, but thirst won, and she crawled toward it. She drank so fast she choked, coughed, wiped her mouth with her hand, and hugged her shawl again as if it were the only solid thing in her world. Robert watched the road, aware that men in Dodge City could see a frightened woman as an easy prize. He crouched again, this time farther away, speaking carefully. "What's your name?" Sumara hesitated, fearing that saying it would summon danger. "Suara," she finally whispered. Robert indicated his horse. "I can take you, but it will be as you say. I'll keep my hands where you want. You'll tell me if it hurts." Her lips parted slightly. She seemed about to cry, but only nodded rigidly and terrified. Robert moved with silent respect, turned sideways to give her space, and let her get up on her own. Though each movement seemed to break her, each breath cost her dearly. When she balanced herself, he did not touch her waist, only offered his forearm. Sumara took it firmly, as if it were the only solid thing left in her world. Robert lifted her slowly onto the horse with a light, careful touch, respecting every limit she imposed. Sumara let out a slight sound as she settled. Her face paled. Robert felt her pain hit like a wave and mounted behind her, leaving space, holding the reins so she would not feel trapped, accompanying her without intruding. He turned the horse off the main road toward open lands, where his ranch rose against the horizon. Her gaze looked forward, jaw tense, eyes vacant, as if her mind remained in a place it refused to name, a memory that haunted her. Robert kept his voice low. "My house is a few miles away. There will be shade, clean water, and a door that locks." Saying locks, her breathing changed, trapped and then relieved, as if finally remembering how to exhale after days of tension. Approaching the ranch, her shoulders tensed again. She whispered without looking back. "If they come for me," Robert answered without hesitation, "then they'll find me first." He guided her to the back, away from the road's view, helping her down without touching what she still kept secret. Inside, the air was cooler, smelling of leather, coffee, and clean pine soap. Robert placed a folded shirt on a chair, simple and large, as a sign of respect. "Put it on," he said. "I'll be on the porch." Sumara paused, wavering, looking at the shirt like both a miracle and a challenge. Finally she entered, closing the door with trembling hands. Robert stepped onto the porch and scanned the horizon, eyes squinting against the sun, aware of every movement on the road. He did not like how the road felt today, nor how his Mara had learned to fear every human touch. A creak behind him announced her presence at the door, wearing the shirt, long sleeves, and loose collar, wrapping her small body. For the first time, she seemed like a flesh-and-blood person, not a spectre crawling along the road. Robert turned his head just enough to meet her gaze. Sumara spoke softly. "Tell me one thing. Who were you running from?" Her mouth opened and closed, caught between fear and the duty to protect what remained of her life. Her fingers clutched the edge of the shirt. Her voice came out small and broken. "My sister's husband." Robert's expression did not change, but something in him tensed slowly. A calculated cold, like a storm forming behind a seemingly calm sky. Sumara looked further down the road, listening for him invisible. "He's going to tell them I'm the guilty one," she whispered. Robert stared at the bright, empty earth, understanding it was not just a rescue, but the start of a conflict that would reach Dodge City, involving neighbors, liars, and the law itself. If Silas convinces the town that Suara is the problem, the hunt will begin with smiles. Robert did not ask everything at once. He knew those running like Suara needed time, something warm in their hands, and a shelter between them and the world. He placed a chair by the table and poured water into a chipped cup, enough not to choke. Sumara sat slowly, each movement negotiated with her body, the shirt hanging from her shoulders, too clean, almost ridiculous after all she had suffered, while her strength rebuilt little by little. If you don't want to miss our content, hit the like button and subscribe, using the button below. Also, turn on the notification bell and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. We appreciate your support. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, but dense, like the air before a storm. Robert did not rush her. He had learned that people who flee need space before explanations, time before questions. Sumara held the hot cup with both hands, as if that simple object were the only solid thing left in her world. Robert's shirt covered her arms and neck, and though it was large, it made her feel less exposed to the world. Robert stayed near the window without looking at her directly. "Are you hungry?" he asked in a calm voice. Sumara hesitated, then barely nodded. It was not real appetite, but the need not to faint after so much accumulated fear. When Robert cracked the eggs into the pan, the dry sound made her startle. He noticed immediately. Every movement became slower, more careful. "It's all right," he said calmly. "It's just food." He sat across from her, keeping distance. "You owe me nothing," he clarified. "Neither your story nor thanks." Those words broke something in her. Her jaw trembled slightly, as if her crying was contained by sheer force. "I didn't plan to run," she finally said. Her voice sounded worn. Robert nodded, letting her speak. He said I exaggerated, that I should thank him for letting me stay under his roof. Sumara lowered her gaze, remembering every word with painful precision. My sister believed him, or pretended to. Either way, she looked at me like I was the problem. I pushed the plate away. The hunger was gone. I waited until he went to town and grabbed the first thing to cover myself. I had no shoes. He chased me. Robert did not move, but something inside him hardened. How far is he? He asked. Sumara shook her head slowly. He's patient. He doesn't run. He waits until you tire. Robert looked out the window. The road was empty, too quiet. Tell me his name. Sumara looked up. Silas Whitfield. The name fell heavy. Robert knew it, and that made everything more dangerous. Silas had reputation, friends, smiles in the right places. That complicates things, Robert said. Sumara tensed. Then you'll send me away. No, the response was immediate. But you must understand something. Men like Silas don't lose quietly. He'll say you stole, that I took you. Some will believe him. Sumara went pale. Will they come for me? Some will, Robert replied. Others won't. He put on his hat and then set it down again. I have enemies in Dodge City for not looking the other way when I should have. Sumara watched him. Weren't you supposed to help me? Robert shrugged. Yes, I was. Silence settled again. Sumara picked up the plate and took a small bite. That minimal gesture eased something in Robert. You'll stay tonight. You'll close the door. I'll be outside. Sumara shook her head. I don't want them to hurt you. Robert barely smiled. That won't be your fault. He stepped onto the porch as the sun began to fall, stretching long shadows over the land. Robert scanned the horizon and saw dust rising in the distance. A rider, alone. It could be nothing, or the beginning of everything. Sumara appeared behind him. I heard a horse. So did I. The rider stopped. He watched, then turned. Sumara brought her hand to her mouth. He knows. Robert nodded. And now he'll tell his story first. What will happen when they come? She asked. Robert watched the dust settle. Then we'll decide. It was no longer about hiding, but resisting when the town believed the wrong man. Morning came without softness. Robert had been awake for hours. Sumara drank coffee with both hands, alert, as if expecting the walls to move. No one pretended this would end without consequences. They'll speak today, Robert said. Silas doesn't wait. He knows whom to tell first. A lie travels faster than a horse in Dodge City. Sumara nodded. That's how he had always operated. If he is furious, he'll bring friends. Robert slid bread toward her. Eat, you'll think better. Sumara obeyed slowly. I never thought running would be the easy part, she murmured. Robert let out a dry laugh. It always is. Stopping is the hard part. They rode toward Dodge City along less traveled streets, but the stares began immediately. In the square, the air changed. People had already made up their minds. Then a voice cut through the murmur. There she is. Silas appeared, smiling. Accompanied. Sumara froze. Robert stepped half a pace forward. She's not going anywhere. Silas spoke of thefts, of concern. The murmur grew. Then prove it, Silas said. Laughter. She screamed. They ran toward the stable. The bolt fell. Her Mara trembled. They're going to take me. The bolt vibrated again, stronger this time, like a warning. Robert pressed his palm against the wood, feeling the voices filter in from outside. They weren't shouts yet, just tense, confident laughter from those who believe reason already belongs to them. Sumara breathed with difficulty, back against the wall, eyes following every shadow. Robert spoke without turning. Don't answer, he said, no matter what they say. She nodded, though her closed throat barely allowed her to swallow. Silas's voice came clear, calm, designed to soothe consciences. She's scared, confused. That old rancher filled her head with ideas. Someone laughed. Another spat on the ground. Robert closed his eyes for a second. He knew that tone. Then another firm voice appeared, female, That girl didn't seem confused. The murmur died down. Robert opened his eyes. He recognized that voice. The boarding house owner, a woman who had buried 2 husbands and learned to trust what she saw. She said Swara didn't come looking for trouble, but for protection. Silas responded with a soft, almost paternal laugh. Kindness does not replace judgment. Robert felt the change, small but real, like a gear finally fitting into place. That's good, Swara whispered. It's something, Robert replied. The bolt hit harder. Open up, someone shouted. We just want to talk. Robert snorted. Talking doesn't start by pushing, he replied calmly from inside. Silas spoke again, quieter. Now you're making this worse for her. Sumara shivered. Robert turned his head slightly. That's what he wants, he said softly, to make you feel guilty for surviving. A shout cut through the air. The sheriff's coming! The noise changed immediately, boots moving, voices lowering. Robert did not feel relief, only preparation. He knew the law in a town like this always arrived tired. Sheriff Doyle appeared in front of the door, tall, weary eyes, the badge heavy on his chest. He didn't look at Silas first, he looked at Robert, as if he already had a man filed away in his mind for years. What's going on here? He asked. And why is Robert in the middle again? Silas spoke quickly. She ran. She stole. He's hiding her. Doyle looked at the closed door. Open it. Robert waited a second before moving. Let's go to the courthouse, Robert said. For the record, Doyle raised an eyebrow. Your idea? Yes. There was a pause, then the bolt gave way. Sumara came out first, slowly, head held high, though her hands trembled. Silence fell over the crowd. Doyle watched her closely. Where do you come from? He asked. And why do you look like you went through a bush? Sumara swallowed. Because I did. Doyle narrowed his eyes. Say it! Of course. Sumara lifted her chin. He wouldn't stop touching me, and when I said no, he said it didn't matter. Silas snorted. She's distorting everything. Doyle turned to Silas. Then tell me what papers she took. Silas opened his mouth, then closed it. A second too late. Robert saw it. Doyle saw it too. Let's go to the courthouse, he said. The word cut like a knife. Inside, the air was cool, contained. Doyle sat. Sumara stayed close to Robert. Why did you run? Asked the sheriff. Because he didn't stop, Silas laughed. Stories. Doyle didn't laugh. Where are the papers? Safe, Silas answered. Robert spoke. She didn't come for papers. He came to get her before she spoke. Doyle frowned. Do you have proof? No. Enough, Robert said. But I know where to look. Ask him about his ledger, Robert said. Look at his face. Doyle looked at Silas. You have a book? Silas laughed too quickly. That's business. Answer, Doyle said. You don't know what you're talking about. Robert held the sheriff's gaze. I know enough. Doyle leaned back. We'll see. I don't promise anything today, but I promise to look where the truth is hidden. Silas darkened his expression. Sumara exhaled the air she had been holding since the road. Robert did not relax. Men like Silas don't fall in front of a crowd. They wait. Stepping into the sun, Robert saw the look Silas gave his Mara. It wasn't anger. It was a promise. And that was clear. The real fight hadn't started yet. Robert walked with his Mara close, not pulling her, just present. The sheriff stayed behind with a clerk. The people dispersed, still hungry for drama. Sumara exhaled. I thought they'd smile and clap. Robert gave a dry laugh. It could still happen. They stopped by the horses. Shall we go back to your ranch? She asked. Yes, not to hide, but so you stay alive and can tell the truth. The way back felt longer, not because of the distance, but because Sumara listened to every sound. He'll come tonight, she said. Robert did not deny it. He thought the same. At the ranch, Robert checked fences and windows before going inside. He offered her water. You'll sleep in the back, he said. I'll stay in the chair. Sumara shook her head. You don't have to. Robert shrugged. He lit only one lamp. Too much light makes a house a target. Sumara noticed. You've been through this before. Robert nodded. I've lived here a long time and known men who don't accept no. Sumara tightened her grip on the cup. Do you believe me? Robert looked at her directly. I believe what I saw on that road. The wind turned the mill outside. For the first time, the silence was not a threat. Night fell without ceremony, as if the sky had decided to watch in silence. The ranch was wrapped in long shadows, and the creaking of the wood became its own language. Robert extinguished the lamp, leaving only glowing embers. His Mara remained seated, alert, listening to the world beyond the walls. It wasn't fear that tensed her shoulders, but memory. Nights always brought men convinced that darkness made them invisible. Robert moved slowly, checking every corner with calculated steps. He didn't carry a loaded rifle by accident, but by experience. When you lived long enough in a place, you learned which sounds warned of real danger. A horse snorted in the distance. Sumara lifted her head. Robert raised a hand, signaling silence. They both listened. It wasn't a lost animal. It was someone waiting to be seen, or not. Robert approached the back window. The wind moved the tall grass, hiding shapes. He thought of Silas, of his restrained smile, of the way some men confused desire with right. Sumara rose without making a sound. She positioned herself beside Robert, not behind. He noticed the gesture and didn't correct it. Some battles were not won by protecting, but by recognizing the other's strength. A sharp knock rang out in the barn, then another. Robert closed his eyes for a moment. There were no longer doubts. Sumara murmured a word in her language, brief, firm, like a promise. Robert opened the door carefully. The night air smelled of dust and sweat. He walked without hurry, knowing that haste betrayed fear. Sumara followed, bare feet steady on the ground. Among the pens, a silhouette appeared. She was not alone. 2 more moved behind. Robert spoke first. There's nothing here for you. Silence answered before voices did. We came for her, said someone. He did not shout. He didn't need to. Robert stepped forward. She's not going anywhere. Sumara held the man's gaze without lowering her chin. The tallest man laughed. There's always a choice, Sumara spoke clearly then, without trembling. I already chose. The wind carried her words into the open night. The first shot missed, but it was enough. Robert responded without hesitation, aiming at the ground in front of them. The message was clear. It was not an empty warning. The men backed off, cursing, promising to return. Robert did not pursue them. He knew the real threat did not always come back that same night. Back in the house, Sumara sat down slowly. Her hands trembled. Now Robert offered her water. She drank and laughed softly. I thought I'd die in silence. Not this time. Robert watched her. The way the ember light outlined her face. It wasn't beauty that stopped him, but determination. That was more dangerous for a man used to being alone. You'll stay here, he said, not as a hiding place, but as a choice. Sumara looked at him for a long moment. I don't accept cages. Robert nodded. I don't offer them either. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was new. Outside, the windmill turned slowly. Sumara leaned back without sleeping. Robert remained awake, listening, thinking of dawn. He knew the town would not forget, that the sheriff would have questions, that Silas would not give up. But he also knew something had changed by saying no in front of everyone. Sumara broke the silence. Why do you do this? Robert took a moment to respond. Because someone had to do it once! She closed her eyes. That answer was enough. When the sky began to lighten, Sumara stood. She walked to the door. The day was coming, and with it, new decisions. Robert followed. Dawn bathed the ranch in pale gold. Sumara breathed deeply. She was not safe, but she was standing. Robert watched her, understanding she was no longer just his witness. From the hill, a figure observed the ranch. Silas had not slept. He smiled slowly. Things did not end like this. They never did. Sumara shivered. Robert did too. They said nothing. Both knew calm was only a pause before the storm. The day passed with work and silence. But beneath every ordinary gesture, a decision was brewing that neither could undo. As evening fell, Robert understood that protecting her was no longer the center. Walking beside her was, and he thought, that would change everything. The town awoke restless that morning, as if the earth itself had heard the shots from the night. Gazes crossed cautiously, and whispers grew behind closed doors, feeding versions that no one dared confirm aloud. Robert entered the blacksmith shop without hurry. He knew his presence no longer went unnoticed. Every hammer strike paused for a second at the sight of him, not out of respect, but expectation. Tension floated like dust in the air. Sumara stayed outside, watching the town's movement. She recognized that false stillness. In his people, it preceded violence. Here it was the same, only disguised as smiles and kind words. 2 women approached her cautiously. They did not ask her name. They asked if she was all right. Sumara answered with brief sincerity. That was enough to unsettle more than any accusation. From the saloon came a loud laugh. Silas was inside, drinking early, surrounded by men who nodded more from fear than loyalty. His voice rose just enough to be heard outside. He says he's running the ranch now, someone commented. Robert stepped out of the blacksmith shop upon hearing it, not responding. Walking without reaction was sometimes the most dangerous provocation. Sheriff Doyle appeared at the end of the street. He did not come calmly. He came with papers. He stopped in front of Robert. There's an improvised hearing now. Robert nodded, knowing refusal would only make things worse. In the small room, the heat was thick. Silas spoke first. He demanded that his Mara be handed over for her protection, using soft words to hide his real intention. Robert listened without interrupting. When it was Sumara's turn, the silence weighed heavier than any speech. She spoke slowly, without embellishment, describing facts. She did not seek pity, she sought clarity. Some lowered their eyes. Doyle asked for proof. Sumara produced a small object wrapped in cloth, a marked ring. Silas went pale, Robert noticed. The sheriff did too. "Where did you get it?" he asked. "He had it when he caught me," she answered, "to remind me who was in charge." The room remained still. Silas reacted too late, shaking his head with too much energy. Doyle struck the table. "Enough! This does not end today," he said. "But it won't be buried either." He ordered that her Mara remain under temporary protection. Robert understood the weight of those words. Outside, the sun seemed harsher. Silas approached close enough for only them to hear. "You can't always protect her." Robert held his gaze. "I don't need always, only enough." Sumara watched that exchange carefully. She understood that Robert was crossing lines with no return. That silent loyalty moved her more than any spoken promise. On the way back to the ranch, they took a longer route. Robert did not explain. Sumara did not ask. Caution was also a form of shared trust. They crossed a dry creek where echoes carried any sound far away. Robert spoke then. "If you want to leave, I can get you safe passage." Sumara shook her head. "In running isn't living." That answer hung between them. Robert felt something loosen in his chest. It was not hope. It was acknowledgement. Upon arrival, they found fresh tracks near the fence. They were not animals. Robert crouched. 3 men. Suara tensed her shoulders. "They'll come tonight." Robert reinforced doors and windows without speaking. Sumara helped, learning the gestures, understanding the house. It was not a refuge. It was a front. While they worked, their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. It was not a romantic gesture, but a necessary pause, like taking a breath before diving. The sun fell slowly. Sumara prepared simple food. Robert ate little. Both knew the night would demand more than words or bullets. In the distance, a single shot echoed. It did not come from the ranch. It was a warning. The town was choosing sides, even if it had not admitted it yet. Sumara approached Robert. "No matter what happens," she said, "I have no regrets." Robert nodded. "Neither do I." Darkness advanced again, but this time it found them not doubting, but ready to face what the town had decided to unleash. The night fell heavier than the ones before, as if the sky sensed blood. The ranch remained still, without crickets or wind. Robert extinguished the last light, and let the darkness do its work, hiding as much as it revealed. His Mara moved with measured calm, every step learned from flight and hunt. She carried no firearms, only a short knife hidden. Robert noticed and said nothing. Trust was also built in silence. A distant whistle broke the quiet. It was no friendly signal. Robert pressed his back against the wall, counting breaths. 3 shadows slipped through the trees, separate, professional in their confident clumsiness. The first shot came from the left. Robert responded without aiming to kill, breaking the ground in front of them. The message was clear. They did not retreat. That confirmed what he feared. They had not come to intimidate. Sumara moved from behind, taking advantage of the blind spot. When one of the men came too close, she appeared like a gust, striking his wrist and disappearing back into the night. The scream was brief. Robert felt the shift immediately. The hunt had lost its shape. Now it was chaos. He used that to his advantage, moving with the terrain he knew better than his own history. One of the men fell injured, dragging another with him. The third hesitated. That second was enough. Robert disarmed him and threw him to the ground, aiming at his chest. "Don't shoot," begged the man. "Tell me who sent you," Robert answered. The silence lasted briefly. "Silas," he finally said. He promised money and protection. Robert clenched his jaw. The town's betrayal was no longer a rumor. Sumara returned, breathing hard. She did not look at the man on the ground. She looked at Robert. He barely nodded. "Go," he said to the attacker. "Tell him not to come back." The man did not wait to repeat the order. Dawn found the ranch marked, but standing. Sumara sat on the step, watching the horizon. She did not smile. She had learned that survival did not always bring immediate relief. Robert sat beside her. "This is no longer just your story," he said. She looked at him. "It never was. It had always belonged to those who dare to touch what does not belong to them." A horse appeared at noon. Sheriff Doyle dismounted, face hardened. He saw the tracks, the damage, the truth written in the earth. He did not ask if there had been a fight. He asked who started it. Robert did not answer. "Sumara, Silas?" Doyle closed his eyes for a second. He nodded. "Then it's time to finish this before the town breaks completely." That afternoon, Doyle gathered several men outside Silas's control. He did not speak of justice, he spoke of limits. Some listened, others left without a word. Sumara watched from afar. She understood these divisions. In her town, they always arrived before the blood. Robert stayed close without invading her space. When Doyle returned, his voice was firm. "Tomorrow there will be an arrest warrant. I don't know if it will be enforced. Silas is not a man who walks alone to a cell." Robert nodded. "Then there will be resistance." Doyle looked at him. "And you?" Robert held his gaze. "I've already chosen." That night, there were no shots. There was waiting. Sumara and Robert shared cold coffee under the stars. They did not talk about the future. Talking about it would have been lying. Sumara broke the silence. "If I die tomorrow, I don't want to be remembered as a victim," Robert answered without hesitation. "You're not. You never were." She looked at him long, as if measuring the weight of those words. Then she rested her head on his shoulder. Just for a moment. It was enough to change something deep. Before dawn, a messenger arrived at a gallop. Silas had fled toward the northern pass, armed and accompanied. Doyle was not in town. Time had run out. Robert stood. Sumara did too. There was no argument. They prepared the horses with quick, precise movements. The decision had already been made before it was spoken. The sun began to rise as they departed. The road north was treacherous, but direct. Robert looked at his Mara. "You don't have to come," she smiled faintly. "I'm not staying behind again." They galloped without looking back, knowing that this journey was not only toward Silas, but toward a point from which neither would return the same. The chase had begun, and with it, the inevitable closure of a story the town had tried to silence too late. The northern pass appeared like an open wound among the rocks. The wind blew hard, carrying dust and omens. Robert slowed the pace. He knew this terrain favored those who felt cornered and ready for anything. Sumara watched the heights with trained attention. She wasn't looking for them, she was looking for signs. A moved stone, a broken track, the wrong kind of silence. There the landscape spoke to those who knew how to listen without haste. The first shot ricocheted off the rock. Robert turned the horse, protecting the flank. Sumara slid to the ground before he could utter a word. It was not impulsiveness. It was a decision made long before arriving. Silas appeared above, sweating, the rifle shaking. He did not smile now. He shouted for them to leave, that this wasn't worth it. Robert answered calmly, "It never was for you. For us, it was." Another man emerged behind Silas. Sumara saw him first. He ran uphill using the shadows. The second shot did not hit her. By the third, it was too late. She disarmed him with a sharp, precise move. Robert advanced, covering her. He did not shout orders. He trusted. Silas backed up until he reached the edge of the drop. His words stumbled, offering money, land, silence. Robert did not respond. He looked at his Mara. She climbed the last stretch. She stopped in front of Silas, did not raise the weapon. She looked at him as one looks at something that no longer holds power. "You said it didn't matter! Now look where you are!" Silas tried to lunge. Robert fired at the ground between them. The bullet raised dust and resolve. Silas lost his balance and fell to his knees, defeated more by fear than by force. The silence returned heavy. Sumara took a deep breath. She did not feel triumph. She felt closure. Robert approached slowly. The wind carried Silas's last words away as he lowered his head. Doyle appeared shortly after with 2 men. He looked at the scene and nodded. There were no speeches, only ropes and belated decisions. The town, Robert knew, would have to learn to live with what had happened. When it was all over, Sumara stepped back a few paces. The horizon was wide, clear. Robert followed her. He thought she might leave, that her path had always been to move forward. "You owe me nothing," he said. Sumara smiled faintly. "I didn't come for debts, I came because I wanted to choose, and that choice isn't over yet." They returned without hurry. The ranch welcomed them intact, as if it had been waiting. The town, in contrast, was quieter. Some looks were different, others still carried resistance. Doyle kept his word. Things were not fixed overnight, but they began to move. Sometimes that was the most justice could promise in hard lands. Sumara began helping around the ranch without asking permission, not as a guest, but as someone who participates. Robert noticed and said nothing. The space had transformed with her presence. One evening, Robert saw her laugh with a woman from the town. It wasn't an easy laugh. It was real. That surprised him more than any armed confrontation. At nightfall, they sat on the porch. The sky burned in soft tones. Sumara spoke of her people, of what was lost and learned. Robert listened without interrupting, storing every word. "I don't know how long I'll stay," she said. Robert nodded. "I don't need promises." The silence that followed was comfortable, chosen, full of respect. When the cold came, his Mara stood up, stopped in front of him, placed her hand on his chest for a moment. It was not a rushed gesture. It was quiet confirmation. Robert took her hand, did not hold it, only held it long enough for both to understand they would walk together as long as they chose. The windmill turned slowly. The ranch breathed. The past had not disappeared, but it stopped commanding. The future was unwritten, and for both, that was freedom. The town continued its course. Some never accepted it, others learned. The story was told in many ways, almost all incomplete. But on that porch, under that sky, Sumara and Robert knew the truth and needed to convince no one else. The wind crossed the plain. The night fell without threat. For the first time, silence asked not for weapons, but for rest. And so, not with applause or easy endings, a story that began with a no and endured through a shared choice came to its close.